Hello and welcome to the first edition of the All Out Brits Podcast, the podcast that brings and sends the house from across the seas on all things NFL. Oh, it's a good start.
I love that, bro. I love that.
Yeah.
Let's keep it rolling.
So new faces, new beginnings, new starts. It's been a great week in the NFL. Week 9 is where we're going to start. A few weeks late, a bit like Aaron Rodgers' ankle by the end of it, to be honest with you. But I'm joined by the wonderful Dak Prescott's jockstrap in Mr. Elliot. Elliot, how you doing, my friend?
Feeling wonderful. It's been a great week in the NFL. I'm excited to talk about it. How are you feeling, sir?
Great, mate. I mean, it's a good week when the 49ers can't lose. Obviously, free on the bounce. Good to set out in the bye week.
This week, going to be Thor. And I'm excited for the Seahawks to go top of the division for a change. It'll be nice.
Well, it was nice to see the Ravens batter them and, put us back on top when we're not playing. So, things are going well. But, not every Birds team can succeed all the time unless you're the Eagles who can beat the Cowboys every single week. But
less about that
later on, pal.
We'll come on to that. We'll come on to that.
So, as you've seen, this is the All Out Brits podcast. 2 Brits talking about an American sport. I'm sure they'll be happy about that. 1 Indian and 1 Anglo-Saxon. I am the Indian that Columbus went to look for, not the Indian Columbus found. This is great. I'm really excited. So I think we should kick off, don't you think?
Absolutely. Let's go.
And I think there's only one place we can start with a man playing for the Texans.
CJ Stroud. That man grew up this week in the NFL.
He definitely did.
470 yards, 5 touchdowns, and 147.9 passer rating. That is single-handedly, undoubtedly, the best display from a rookie quarterback ever. For a rookie player ever. No one's ever done what he's done. He's a top 10 QB in the league. In week 9 of his first season, nothing can be better than that. What a day to be a Texans fan Sunday was. What a day.
How impressive.
They dealt with for 3 years.
Yeah.
The rubbish they've dealt with. Mm-hmm. Not getting the first round pick. Well, that's turned out to be a blessing in disguise because CJ Stroud is the GOAT. The GOAT.
But what did you think of the performance? Obviously playing a Tampa team. Baker had a great game, I think.
That's the thing, yeah. And I think
last game or late drive to go and win the game for him. CJ Stroud, the rookie, was incredible. Talk a bit about that, mate.
Absolutely incredible. And I think it's important that we do mention Baker Mayfield because he's going to a Tampa Bay team that's a little bit dysfunctional. They're still recovering from having Tom Brady as the quarterback, and they've invested all that money and the cap space into winning the Super Bowl. But now there's nothing there for them now. Mike Evans is going to get another 1,000-yard receiving career, 1,000-yard season, but he does that every year. It's nothing different. Baker, 2 touchdowns, over 250 yards, a solid game, but not enough to take the victory away from the young man. And I think it's ridiculous when you think of how talented he is coming out of college. All the pressure was on Bryce Young. All the spotlight was on Bryce Young. And CJ Stroud was almost, I wouldn't say quietly because he's a second overall pick, but he's slithered his way in there. And what an unbelievable game-winning drive that was. I think the second to last play of the game where he threw that unbelievable pass to Tank Dell on the sideline, that was one of the plays of the week for me. Unbelievable. The poise that he showed, superb player. He's going to have a great career in the NFL. Absolutely.
And you mentioned there, obviously, CJ Stroud being the number 2 pick. And we looked at last season, obviously, Lovie Smith, last game of the season as coach, only been there for the season. And he ends up getting the boot at the end of the season because of the fact that they won the last game against the Colts, which meant that they lost the number 1 overall pick, which they pretty much had secured for themselves. As you said, it's worked out pretty well for them. But how many do you think have fallen into place? If you look at the fact that Nico Ryan's the GOAT for me, is at the Texans as the coach, obviously, again.
Why do you think that? Why do you think that, Taryn?
Because the way I see it is, if Brock Purdy doesn't lose his elbow in the NFC game, then I think the 49ers go on and win the Super Bowl. And how can you disband that team if you've got a game-winning defense, a game-winning offense, and you've got to pay the man? But obviously, you lose that, and then he starts looking away, the vacancies appear, and he goes on to be the Texans coach. I think he's amazing, and he's shown that. But for yourself, how big is it, the fact that by going second, they almost left an impossible quarterback room decision to be made by another team, which ended up being the Panthers and ended up being Bryce Young, and ultimately meant that we've got this incredible young rookie, probably rookie of the year.
Absolutely.
Contender, definitely. What do you think that impact that had to have?
I think if you're looking at the organisation as a whole, the Texans organisation, it was absolutely shambolic. You had, before JJ Watt left, you had him calling out the organisation, calling out how shoddy they were. And then they go from losing the first overall pick, getting the number 2 pick, but then also acquiring the 3rd overall pick to get Will Anderson Jr., who's turned out to be a very, very decent selection. Only got 2 sacks on the year, but that Texans defense now is 4th or 5th overall in QB pressures for the season. However, this week against the Bengals, that is not going to be enough. It's not going to be enough. That defense got torched by Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield, who's turned into a little bit of a journeyman quarterback now. He can't really find a home. He's found one almost in Tampa Bay, but Joe Burrow is going to torch that defense. But let me tell you something. If one man can torch a defense, so can another man. And if someone's coming off a hot week, no one else in the NFL is coming off a hot week like CJ Stroud. I'm taking the Texans over the Bengals. You heard it here first.
He's pulling out bold claims already, but we'll talk about that later on, mate. We'll let that fester for a bit. But you mentioned there, journeyman quarterback, a late game-winning drive, new teams as well. I think there's one man that we have to talk about, the man who was a bold bird at the start of the week and finished it old Viking at the end of it, Mr. Joshua Dobbs. Absolutely incredible game by Dobbs. Obviously, the Vikings are in a bit of a shambles at the moment. Jefferson out. Kirk Cousins goes down as well. They've had a few to say the very least, but they're making Jimmy Garoppolo like nothing with the amount of INTs and fumbles that they've been having at this point. But it's been a crazy season for the Vikings. But this weekend, just let's talk about that. Josh Dobbs.
Joshua Dobbs. What a name for a start. Joshua Dobbs. The man comes in after a week of not knowing anyone's name, just saying hello. That's all he's done for the week. He's just walked around. He's had his helmet measured up. He's had his pads measured up. And he's got one new T-shirt. That's all he's done all week. And he comes in and absolutely delivers when it matters most. When his team needed him, he put them on his back and he carried them over the line. 158 yards in the air, 2 passing touchdowns, 20 of 30. And also, more importantly, I think, what he did with his legs was superb. 66 rushing yards and a touchdown. I thought that was an absolutely unbelievable performance. And it would have been the performance of the week had it not been for CJ Stroud. But coming in and teaching on the sideline, the center, your cadence, your rhythms, that is ridiculous. Yeah. It's absolutely ridiculous.
What do you think of the trade, though? Obviously, it's been a tough season for the Cardinals. I think Dobbs has probably been a shining star in the offense in parts, but he's just struggled with the O-line, and I just think that the team in general struggled without Kyler Murray as well. They're almost a franchise in transition. What did you make of the trade for him to then go to the Vikings?
I think from the Vikings' point of view, if I was the Vikings GM, I would have completely given up on the season and I would have tried to get Caleb Williams at 1st overall in the draft. That's not looking like it's going to happen anymore. They're sat pretty, to be honest with you, at 5-4, only one win behind the Lions in the division at 6-2. But I think the trade's a very strange one. I do think it's a strange one. You go from losing wide receiver 1, probably one of the best wide receivers in the league in Justin Jefferson. And then since then, they've turned it on. They're 4-1 away from home. So they play really, really well on the road. But I don't know if it's going to be enough this week. But we'll see.
We'll see indeed. And I think another thing that we saw this week is Jimmy G getting dropped. As we sat here with the Jimmy G shirt on, I'll try and hide the tears. But the Raiders get a win against the Giants team, who obviously haven't had the best time this season. But Jimmy G getting dropped. Big call, sacking the GM, and then going and sacking the coach as well. Crazy week in Las Vegas. What have you made of it?
I don't think Jimmy G's been a good quarterback since he was a backup for Tom Brady in New England.
That's just scandalous, mate. You know what I mean? He's been to a Super Bowl. He's won God knows how many championship games. Like, what more do you want from him? Game-winning drives, 49ers GOAT. Well, I don't get what you need.
I think your affinity with Jimmy Garoppolo comes from what the man looks like from the shoulders up, not what he can do with his arm. He's a very
he can do plenty of things with his legs as well before they got crucified ACL. So
that's it. For me, it was the trade to San Francisco at that time made sense. He won 7 games on the bounce in his first season at San Francisco, finished the season superbly. But now he's gone in the bin, mate. He's not a good QB.
I think he's got the most INTs this season as well, and he's only played 6 games.
Absolutely, but I think it was the right week to drop him.
Yeah.
You're thinking about who they'll play in the Giants. The Giants are probably the most dysfunctional franchise in the NFL right now. But the reward for that is that they're probably going to get Caleb Williams in the draft. Daniel Jones has unfortunately played his last game for the Giants. I hate to say it. He's done his ACL out for the season. But that Giants team is woeful. And I think changing that quarterback at that time was the right decision for morale, for everything that was going on in the Raiders organization. Devontae Adams isn't having a good time, and I think he goes at the end of the season, regardless of what happens, because the QB that they've got at the moment is absolutely mid. He's so mid. They've got 8-8 written all over them, that team.
Yeah.
And I think Devontae Adams is wasted there. But what do you think?
Well, I think another point that's quite interesting to talk about is how much of an impact, if we look at, we'll talk as Brits, we'll talk about English football. We know that it's a revolving carousel of managers getting sacked. Do you think it has more of an impact and sort of more of an effect in the NFL when coaches get sacked because of how big the roster is, how big of a role they're coming in and playing, and how responsible they are for the team and as opposed to a manager where trades really sort of left or transfer left to those above, and it's really just player management. Do you think that plays a bigger role in the NFL?
I think it's much harder to coordinate a change in the NFL than it will be in any other sport. You're looking at a 52-man roster with 3 different teams, and each of those teams has got so many subsets of coaches, of players, of captains of each team. It's so hard to make that change. But to do it mid-season, to me, is ridiculous. I don't get it. But it's worked for the Raiders for 1 week. He's 1-0 as a head coach, so why not roll with it?
Yeah. And I think they were very happy, obviously beating one-knee Danny Jones and then having Mr. DeVito come in. And they enjoyed themselves. Mr. Jacobs was seen smoking on a pack with a cigar. What do you make? We know that it was meant to Giants are a team in shambles, but to go and celebrate in that manner, obviously we know it's been a long time coming at the Raiders. We know there's been issues behind the scenes, and it felt like a big relief. But is that a thing that you want mid-season when you haven't been great and you've been pointing fingers at every single player? And to be honest, they weren't outstanding in the game. They just did enough to get past a fake side. What do you make of that then?
Bore off, you boring man. If you win a game in the NFL, you get drafted, you win a game. You tell me you're going to go have a cup of tea. No, go out. You're in Vegas, for goodness sake. If I was in Vegas and I won a game in the NFL, I'm telling you now. Well, I'm not going to tell you what I'd do because I'm going to get you.
We'll find you, mate. That's the problem.
No, I won't turn up for week 2. Do you know what I mean? It's ridiculous. I think go out and enjoy yourself. Why not? Well, who's it hurting?
Well, it's hurting me that Jimmy G's not the start of the game. So I think that's where it comes from, to be honest with you. But yeah, we'll move past that now, and I think we'll talk about something that might get under your skin after you've been cussing Garoppolo for about 5 minutes there. Cowboys. How about them Cowboys losing to the Eagles? How about them? They came with the Sikh motivation, and they've conquered nothing so far. So what can we say at this point?
I think that game perfectly describes what it's like to be an NFL fan in the UK. You go to bed at 10:30, knowing that you've got to get up for work at 6:15 in the morning. First thing you do, you look at your phone after your team's winning at halftime, looking quite comfortable, shutting down one of the best offenses and almost dismantling. That's maybe a bit over the top. A very, very good Philadelphia defense. 10-7 up at the half, to looking at my phone going, we've lost 28-23. That's what it's about being a fan in this country. I think it's, if you'd have told me at the start of the day that Dak Prescott would have thrown for over 350 yards, for 3 touchdowns and 115 rating, I'd have bitten your hand off if you'd have offered me that.
Without an interception as well. Bloody hell.
That man has made steps this season. And I'm going to say, I think he's a top 5 QB in the league at the moment. at the moment. I'm not going to get carried away, but since sacking the offensive coordinator, Kellen Moore, he's gone to the Chargers now. You've seen what he's done there. They're a very, very mid-franchise at the moment. He's calling the plays with Mike McCarthy under center. The control he has, I love. He stands there, he shouts, he bellows at his offense, and I love it. But it wasn't enough to get past that Philadelphia team. The refs didn't help, but when do they? With the Cowboys, we expect that. Do you know what I mean?
Here come the excuses, eh?
Yeah, they've got to come from somewhere, and they're going to come from me this week. But I think overall, it's not a bad loss. It's a loss that we can take a lot of confidence from. CeeDee Lamb, another fantastic game, 191 yards. That's 2 on the bounce over 150, 3 on the bounce over 100, and he's going to have an absolute field day against that Giants secondary on Sunday. But for now, we'll beat them in the playoffs. That's all I'm going to say.
I think what was quite interesting for me is I thought the one team that would be able to stop the tush push that everyone keeps banging on about was the Cowboys D. And if anything, they just resorted to breaking people's arms instead because they just couldn't stop that 1 yard. And I point to you, which I've been thinking about this, is do you think it gets to a point where teams almost adopt like a rugby scrum and have like a front line and a second line and you just drive it forward and then have people coming off the edge to just push him back? Like we've seen Crosby just jumps over the top and just pulls the quarterback down. Is that what we need to sort of stop this tush push, which people keep going on about?
I have no idea. I think if you're going to stop the tush push, you go full on American, you go Donald Trump, and you build a wall. That's the only way to stop it. There's no other way. You said it. You mentioned rugby there. Well, the Philadelphia Eagles obviously spoke to a Scottish rugby team and about how they do their scrums, and that's how they develop this tush push, the brotherly shove. Which is supposed to be a gain for about inches. They're getting 3 yards a time. It's absolutely ridiculous. I don't understand how it's got to this point where no team in the league can stop it. They're at about 92 to 95%, I believe, of getting the first down when they run that play. It's absolutely automatic. And interestingly, if they're in a situation where they're 3rd and 2, they can go for the long play because it doesn't matter because it's automatic at this point. It's inconceivable to me as a fan watching that play that is going to get stopped. How would you stop it? I don't understand how. I don't get it.
I genuinely think that's the only way. Is if you mentioned there that they've talked to Scottish rugby teams, fashioned it off scrums. The only way you stop a scrum is you get on the other side and you have to push back. And I think that they're going to have to find a formation that works in terms of having 2 rows, people coming off the edge, and just all out Brits, really. Just all out
Brits. All out. Send the house, boy. Send the house.
That 1 yard, because otherwise it's going to dominate every single year.
When that happens and you send the house and you send everyone, they just chuck it behind and they run straight around you. They've seen that before. Yeah. Now, at what point do you just have to accept that you've got to stop them getting to within 3 yards and put a marker down and say you are not going past these 3 yards? Because the Cowboys did that really well. I thought at times in that game, to stop the Eagles on 3rd down, I thought they were absolutely sensational. I thought that Cowboys defense was very, very good. And I think missing Diggs in the secondary has been a bit of a hindrance on the season. But that tush push, man, I don't know. I'm lost for words at this point.
You better get thinking. The only way I think you stop it is just with a scrum. Almost, you have to batter them back and hope that through that way you stop them, because I just think there's no other conceivable way that you do it. I think it's and unfortunately I hope that it's a solution found and not a case where they just ban it because it's OP almost. And it's inconceivable to think that could happen. But when it comes to the NFL, they're worse than the Premier League when it comes to decisions and everything like that. Yeah. But
if you're banning the tush push because it's so effective, do you then start banning Brock Purdy throwing passes 1 yard in front and Deebo Samuel running down the length of the field to knock up yards? Because that's what it is. Just because you're good at something doesn't mean it should be banned. That's what I would say.
Well, I think we've talked at length about the great football that we've seen this week. And talking of great football, let's move on to our fantasy segment of a week where well, you know what? Let's go through where we're sat in fantasy. Obviously, not everyone's going to know, how our league's progressing, how we're doing. I'm currently sat 3-6. It's been, a tough 6 losses. Half of them weren't deserved. Some stupid. As you mentioned, waking up when you need 60 points to win or to go ahead, and for some reason the Giants end up not a score on the ball, and the Cowboys just come and score 60 with 2. It hurts still. So 3-6, but a win this week. Scoring over 1-6.
Going up.
And I said to you, the Patriots dynasty is what my team is. Big Cock Brock 13 is going to come back and rule our division. But obviously, we know you're at the top at the moment. So
I think when you say the Patriots dynasty, I think you mean the current Patriots dynasty with Matt Jones and QB.
Oh, man, you keep saying it. I'm telling you, I'm basically like Brady and Aiden.
You sat at 3-6. You sat at 3-6.
Doesn't matter, man.
And just to let the people know, just to let the 4 people know that are listening to this right now, just to let my mum, my girlfriend, listen know, I'm sat at 6-3, top of the tree, loving life. Absolutely loving life.
A few dodgy manufactured trades in there, a few flings with girlfriends offered out for McCaffrey. It's been a crazy old season.
You call it a dodgy trade. I call it a clever trade. That's why I'm in 3.
All I'm saying is we might have to ban that because it's on par with a tush push. I'll tell you that much. But let's look at this week. Obviously, week 10, some good fixtures, a few buys, big teams on buys. Let's talk about picks. I'll start because I think I've got an absolute gem who I don't think many people have realised or picked up or seen. But the Saints' offense is cooking. They've been cooking for weeks. The lineup they've got, Kamara in the backfield, Derek Carr leaves the Raiders, and he seems to be doing a half-decent job at quarterback. But the man, Taysom Hill, the tight end, in and around the red zone, gets put under gun, and he's running it, he's passing it. He comes this weekend with a receiving touchdown and then a passing touchdown. Comes with 20 points. Great week, great tight end option if you haven't been lucky enough to get the likes of Taylor Swift's boyfriend or Mark Andrews. Obviously, Dallas Goedert's injured now. So I think for me, that's a big pick this week. Who you got at your number 1 spot then for this week?
Well, I think just to talk about a little bit about Taysom Hill. He is that player who, no matter where he lines up on the field, he's going to do something. Over 50 yards rushing this week. I think it's an absolute steal to put him at tight end. Definitely. But for me, as a Cowboys fan, you mentioned before in our fantasy week 1, Taran Sidhu went to bed leading by 35 points with just the Dallas Cowboys.
It was genuinely 60 points.
60 points with the Dallas Cowboys to play. And somehow 45 points and then a few from CD Lamb later. And I've took the dub in week 1. And who are the Cowboys playing this week? It's the Giants. I'm seeing another massive game from that Cowboys defense. I wouldn't be surprised if they kept them to under 100 yards. The only way that the Cowboys defense don't get 40 points this week is if Saquon Barkley decides to carry the ball 400 times and gets 300 rushing yards. Because there's no way that quarterback's doing anything other than throwing to the defense. That is it. Cowboys defense, 50 points. Mark my words.
Yeah, I think your underwear is going to change colour this week with the shutout opportunities that you could have against the Giants, stack opportunities as well. So, yeah, I'd hate to be in the room when the Cowboys probably win this weekend as well. What was your other picks? Because I think for me, I'll bunch the two together. I think the Texans, obviously, we've talked about CJ Stroud. The offense is cooking. But playing the Bengals, obviously a team that we know are going to march down the field forward and backward. But looking ahead past that, the Texans have got the likes of the Cardinals coming up soon. I think they do play a few of the teams that haven't had a great start to this season almost. But getting the likes of Tank Dellin, Nico Collins, if we've got him, or even going deeper and sticking Noah Brown in, I think the options there are endless. And the way Miko Ryans gets them going on defense, offense, they're going to put points up every single week. And a team as well who are getting it done, defense and offense, is the Ravens. God, Lamar, he's found his legs, he's found his hands, and he's found his receivers this year, and it's working out well. And obviously, we've seen Gus Edwards has a great game this week, but I think they're rotating in that backfield as well. So I definitely think it's one to keep an eye on, Texans and the Ravens. What you got then, Elliot?
Absolutely. Going back to the Texans there, Noah Brown, 190 yards. 150 yards, I think, this week in in the NFL. Absolutely superb. Former Cowboys player, of course. We do it well. That's what happens. Dalton Schultz as well at tight end. I think he's another great shot for the Texans. And then Lamar Jackson, second MVP season in court for him. I think he's going to absolutely go off in the next few weeks. But my fantasy pick, and I'm going to surprise a few people here, it's not a pick, it's a trade. I think if you're a player in your league and you've got a man called Tyreek Hill, sell. When you look ahead at the games that he's got, you've got high draft capital on him now. People are going to want anything to get their hands on Hill. But when you're looking ahead to the fantasy playoffs, he's got the Dallas Cowboys defense. He's got another, I forget the games he's got to play, another 2 really, really difficult games with teams that are fantastic against receivers. So my pick for this week is sell Tyreek Hill.
You telling me Tyreek's up for sale? You're looking for something for him.
I may have acquired him a trade earlier. I may be throwing out some feelers, but who knows?
Again, a night with my wife is always the offer if it's something like that. So we'll talk off air. We'll sort that out. What about this week's punts then? So punts in terms of who we think is going to come out on top in this week's matchups, the sort of outrageous predictions, outrageous ideas that you might have for this weekend's matchups. We'll go ahead with the ones that we think. I'll start because there's only one team that we should talk about this weekend, and that is the SF 49ers coming off a bye. Brock Purdy rested his elbows, and hopefully Steve Wilkes gets down out of the booth and starts coaching that day and doing a better job against the Jacksonville Jaguars, playing Prince Charming himself and his ragtag bunch of misfits who seem to be getting it done this year. But I think the 49ers bounce back. If we go 4 losses on a bounce, I think you might never see me again. I think we'll be one and done on this podcast, and that'll be it. We'll be done for this.
And what an episode it's been, can I just say?
It'll be a great start.
I do see the Jacksonville Jaguars turning over the San Francisco 49ers, going 0-4 in the last 4.
Behave, man.
Brock Purdy, not that guy. Not that guy.
No, I'm not having that. Go on then. What's the game you're going to keep your eye on this week then?
For me, we've spoken about it a little bit earlier. Bengals versus the Texans. And for me, the Texans take the dub. CJ Stroud is the man. Enough said. We've spoken enough about him, but I'm going to speak a little bit more. He's the man. He's the man in the NFL. And he looks like an absolute child. The fact that he's pretty much the same age as me makes me really upset. I'm sat here talking about the man that everyone wants to be right now. Texans take the dub.
You happy with that then?
I'm chuffed with that. Why not?
You would think that you've got Joe Burrow's underwear alongside your Dak Prescott collection. The way you've been going off at him today, God, you're worse than the TikTok girlies at this point, mate.
No, mate, I've told you, Livy Dunn's got a special place for me, but Joe Burrow, QB1 as well. Like everyone can win a game this week. Why not? Call it a draw.
Scary.
That's what I'm gonna call. I'm gonna call a draw.
Wow.
Texas draw. You heard it here first.
2 overtimes and a draw. It's crazy, bro. Absolutely crazy. But okay. I think another game, probably the game of the week, I'd argue, is the Cleveland Browns versus the Baltimore Ravens. 2 teams where defenses have just been stacked. Offenses, obviously, Deshaun Watson's been out. He's been put in the quarterback position. Arguably, maybe shouldn't be there. But still, the Browns have put points on the board, shut out a lot of teams, and same as the Ravens. So I think this could be an all-time matchup from 2 teams who, going into this season, you probably wouldn't have thought would be at this point where they are now. Obviously, we know they have the quality, but we didn't think that all the pieces would click together, and they really have so far. And it's been a really great watch for both teams. How do you think that one's going to go? Because to me, I think the Ravens are going to edge it. I think Lamar's just got too much in those legs, and he'll propel the Ravens forward. What are you thinking?
Lamar Jackson at the moment is the MVP of the season, without a shadow of a doubt.
Wow, big shout.
And that Browns QB that they've got, whatever his name is, whatever he's done, we're not even going to talk about him. We're going to talk about who he's going to throw to. Amari Cooper on the edge is probably the best chance that they've got of exposing that Ravens secondary. But for me, like you've said, the Ravens take over. I think Lamar runs all over. You saw what they did against the Lions, and I can see that happening straight away against the Cleveland Browns. Myles Garrett is not going to have a sniff. Lamar's going to be running around. He's going to be running for his life. but he's going to be running for yards and touchdowns, and that's what we want out of my MVP.
Wow, he's putting big claims down here. He's got the Texans and the Bengals as ties, and now he's putting MVPs out.
Episode 1, when people come back in 6 years' time and see where we started, they're going to be hearing these bold claims.
Jackson calls for MVP and Jimmy G getting cussed. So, well, Brock Purdy has got, 3 rings, and you sat here saying he ain't the guy. We'll remember that.
Yeah, nah.
I think also my sleeper pick for this week, which a game I think, is definitely one to keep your eye on. Obviously, we talked about the Chargers a little bit, and they've been a bit mid. They haven't, Justin Herbert's incredible at quarterback, and Keenan Allen had a great, was it 1,000 or 10,000 receiving yards in his career this weekend? So outstanding.
Well, me and Keenan Allen aren't getting on well at the moment because he cost me this week in fantasy. So
don't get upset, mate. You can't win them all. Just got to win enough. Is what I've learned. Got to win enough. But yeah, I definitely think Lions versus Chargers. Obviously, the Lions had a great start. I think they've fallen off a little bit. They've had a few issues in the backfield in terms of running backs. Jared Goff has been very impressive. Passed for God knows how many yards, but very impressive. But they just seem to be a little bit short in departments which you can't really put your fingers on. And I think the Chargers team, even though they've struggled on defense and offense, they have been clicking. I think this could be a high-scoring game. And I think, again, it could put the Browns and the Ravens game out of the primetime slot on Red Zone, because this could be a crazy game.
Absolutely. And when you mentioned about things that are slightly going wrong for the Lions, I look at the trade of DeAndre Swift to the Eagles at the start of the year, and I think could that have solved some things in the backfield for them? Getting a running back who can run consistently to support the throwing of Jared Goff, because he's been an absolute revelation since going to Detroit. Obviously started at the back end of last season, and he's carried that form on forward. And for me, the Lions take the win.
Okay. Anything else you've got to add? Any punch you want to kick in for this week? Anything else?
I think I'm good, bro. I think maybe a bit more Brock Purdy slander if you're here for it.
I will pass, bro. Well, you know what? We'll head to the sideline for a question to wrap up this week's edition of the All Out Brits podcast. And it's a question which I think might have an interesting answer. Now, on Twitter, there's been questions in terms of football of if you were going to have a penalty and if you score, you get $1 billion, but if you miss, you die. Would you take it yourself, or would you pass that over to someone? You pick who to take that penalty. But in the context of the NFL, if you have a field goal, we'll say 40 yards out.
Yeah, that's right.
36. You want to call it 36?
36 yards, yeah.
36 yards. You make it. You score, you get $1 billion, you miss, you die. Are you putting that pressure on your shoulders, or are you going to pick someone else? And if so, who are you going to give the ball to, and whose leg are you going to trust?
I think if we're talking 36 yards is a long way. That's what I'm going to say. I've played football all my life. I don't think I could kick an NFL ball 36
Inches definitely matter as well, so you got to keep that into context.
Absolutely. If we're going from 15 yards, I'm going to back myself all the way. But from 36, 2 men come to mind. Long time, longevity, NFL, future Hall of Famer, Justin Tucker. I think it's hard to look past him. But if I was, and I will, I'm going to go to the man who's kicked 14 straight field goals this season. My special teams rookie of the year. Do you know what team he plays for Terrence to do? Do you know what he plays for?
Yeah.
It's Dallas Cowboys, Brandon Aubrey. What a revelation he's been a kicker. And for me, if I've got $1 billion on it and my life, give him the ball.
You don't back yourself, no?
Oh, God, no. Would you back yourself? You tell me that you back yourself from 40 yards away, 36 yards away.
Of course, mate. I mean, I've got an absolute cannon on me. The Brown Perlo. Why can't that translate to NFL kicking?
Mate, I've seen your thighs, lad. It ain't going past the 35 yard line.
I put it up there with Tucker, I'll tell you that much. I think for me, you know what? I'm torn. I've got 2 as well. Now, I don't value my life that much, clearly. But you know what? I'd love to put Jimmy in the hot seat. He's great at putting the ball into empty spaces. So why not go? Hey,
I'll tell you what, Jimmy G. He's not going to he's going to get the distance. He doesn't like
exactly.
He loves overthrowing his receivers. So he's definitely going to get the distance.
In my head, I'm thinking I can honor the man and go, Garoppolito, kick it for me. get me a Subway afterwards, and look good whilst you're doing it, pal, and save my life and get me $1 billion. I think that's great. That's the better answer than the boring. Just get a kicker in. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so.
But if I did value my life, I think I'd have to go for Mr. X49ers, Robbie Gould, Mr. Reliable.
I knew you were going to say Robbie Gould.
He puts it through every single time. The boy puts it through every single time. So I'm going to back that man. Obviously, it's a shame he's not with the Niners, and we're stuck with Mr. Jake Moody, who's.
I was going to say, because he's been really, really good for you this season, hasn't he? Yeah. Especially against. Who was it? Was it?
Let's move on, bro. Yeah,
he got that game-winning field goal, didn't he? I forget who it was against. Do you remember?
Right, let's send the house and pack off and go home. I've had enough of this. There's too much 49er slander. Perfect. We've got some entertaining fixtures in week 10, and we've got plenty more games of the NFL season to go before the illustrious Super Bowl in February, which I know we're looking forward to. The days have been booked off.
Absolutely.
The Red Bulls have been bought in preparation. But what a great first week to be talking about, Elliot. It was perfect time to get this pod up and running.
Absolutely. And for all of you that have stayed this long, I'm probably speaking to myself at this stage, but thank you very much. Tell my mother and tell my girlfriend for listening.
Definitely. And if the Yanks don't like the Brits, unfortunately, you might be listening to us a bit longer more. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining us this week on the All Out Brits podcast. And we'll see you next time when we've got the all out action and we're making sure to keep you coming back on the All Out Brits podcast. See you later.
See ya.